Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Technology, a podcast exploring the latest in computers, networking, home automation, mobile computing, and all things technology related. Our hosts will take a deeper dive into the latest and greatest in tech trends and give you the information you need to enable your tech-centric world.
This is Insights into Technology, episode 24, signed, sealed, encrypted, and still screwed. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen. Before we get into the tech news this week, I did want to apologize for missing last week. Unfortunately, I did sit down to record it, and I got about halfway through recording last week's podcast. But unfortunately, I was still getting over a bit of a cold, and by the time I got halfway through, my voice was to the point that I was hacking up a lung, coughing, and couldn't finish the podcast. I tried to get back to it over the weekend, but still was not feeling 100%. And you can probably tell from my voice that I'm still a little on the mend still, but hopefully we can get through it this week. On to our tech news of the week. Our first episode comes to us from Lawrence Abrams at Bleeping Computers. Signed, sealed, delivered, malware inside. Cybercriminals are exploiting Microsoft's trusted signing service to code sign malware with short-lived 3-day certificates. This tactic allows malicious software to appear legitimate, potentially bypassing security measures that typically flag unsigned executables. The Trusted Signing Platform, introduced in 2024, offers developers a streamlined process to sign applications, enhancing their credibility and trustworthiness. However, threat actors have found ways to abuse this system, leveraging its convenience to distribute malware under the guise of legitimate software. The abuse of Microsoft's trusted signing service undermines the reliability of code signing as a security measure. Enterprises relying on signed software as a trust indicator may inadvertently allow malicious applications into their networks. Traditional security solutions that prioritize signed executables may need to recalibrate their detection algorithms. The exploitation of legitimate signing services complicates the differentiation between genuine and malicious software. Organizations must implement additional layers of verification for software, even when code signed. This includes scrutinizing the source, behavior, and origin of applications before deployment. So, what as an organization can you do? Well, the first thing you can do is implement strict application whitelisting. And yes, this is cumbersome, this is awkward, this is oftentimes difficult to do depending on how large a suite of software that you use. But maintaining a curated list of approved software and restricting the execution of unauthorized application regardless of their code signing status is a definite way of mitigating this particular problem. Continuous monitoring and anomaly detection. This is something you should be doing on a regular basis anyway, but in this case here, instead of seeing intruders coming in, you should see internal threats to your network. Deploying advanced monitoring tools to detect unusual application behavior, which may indicate the presence of malicious software masquerading as legitimate. Now, under these situations here, you want to be able to monitor applications for traffic in and out of your network, for traffic across your network, access to sensitive storage areas on your network, or any kind of unusual activity such as high CPU utilization, high memory utilization, anything that seems unusual, you want to be able to pick up on it because these applications can be compromised in various ways. You should also regularly update your security policies, staying informed about emerging threats and adjusting security protocols accordingly. Engage with software vendors that understand the measures they are implementing to prevent abuse of their signing services. This is something where there's a defined pattern right now where attackers are using legitimate services and legitimate tools that have been put in place to add legitimacy and authentication and verification to our everyday computing needs, and they're usurping these tools now to slip their malicious software through the various nets out there by pretending to be legitimate, either using legitimate services like Google or Amazon or Microsoft, or using functions like this with signed code to slip through firewalls and scanning and so forth. So there's a trend, there's a disturbing trend these days where the tools that we use to protect ourselves are now being used against us. And I think we as a community of professionals in technology need to understand this and start finding better ways to secure our networks and our applications. Next up, don't let your DNA go down with the ship. This one comes to us from The Record. 23andMe has officially filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, throwing the future of millions of customers' sensitive genetic data into uncertainty. The troubled genetic testing firm, once a leader in the consumer DNA space, plans to reorganize and pursue a sale of its assets. Amid this, co-founder and CEO Ann Wojcicki has stepped down, marking a major leadership shift during a turbulent time. The bankruptcy comes on the heels of a massive 2023 data breach affecting over 6 million users, which severely damaged the company's reputation and financial health. Privacy advocates and regulators are now sounding the alarm, urging consumers to delete their genetic data before a sale transfers those records to unknown entities. Although 23andMe claims buyers must comply with applicable privacy laws, the company's own policy allows personal data to be, quote, accessed, sold, or transferred in bankruptcy proceedings. The lack of federal genetic privacy laws means consumers are largely reliant on patchwork state laws, with California's Attorney General leading calls for immediate data deletion. So in this case here, customer data is a liquid asset in the bankruptcy. It's worth money. It's probably the thing that's worth the most money, more than any other assets that they have. 23andMe's data is arguably the most valuable remaining asset, raising concerns over how genetic and personal data can be commodified in insolvency. Enterprises should reevaluate how they classify and protect customer data, especially health-related or biometric data, to avoid reputational fallout in worst-case scenarios. If nothing else, this is a cautionary tale about how you as a business can operate better under these circumstances. 23andMe is probably doing significant financial damage or possibly personally identifiable information damage to its users and to its reputation. I mean, clearly their reputation is shot at this point. Financial risk assessments of third-party vendors should now include not just operational reliability, but also data retention policies, especially in bankruptcy. Procurement and compliance teams should proactively identify high-risk vendors and include exit clauses addressing data security and deletion in contract terms. And that is a good business practice across the board. There should always be termination terms on your contracts based on performance, misappropriation or malicious activity, whether or not the company was aware of it or not. The absence of a national genetic data protection law leaves companies and users at the mercy of state regulations with inconsistent protections. Enterprises operating nationally should adopt California-style privacy controls as a baseline, even outside regulated jurisdictions. So if you're a customer of 23andMe and they have your data, I would immediately tell you to go and delete that data. There is a process to delete the data up there. Hopefully, and I don't know if anyone's confirmed this yet or not, but hopefully by doing so, when those assets are finally sold off, your data won't go with them. I wouldn't guarantee it at this point, but the only option you have is to go delete that data. I don't know if you can export it and keep it offline. This is all things that users are going to have to do. I'm not a user myself. My wife is, so I'm going to work with her to figure out how to best protect ourselves, and we'll report back on our findings afterwards. Next up, Yahoo News' James Pearson tells us when confidential chats go public. In light of recent events where U.S. officials inadvertently included an Atlantic journalist in a Signal group discussing sensitive war plans, or they're calling them attack plans now. I'm not sure it makes a difference. Signal's leadership has reaffirmed the platform's commitment to robust security. Signal, now renowned for its end-to-end encryption, ensures that only intended recipients can access the content of communications. This incident underscores the platform's security efficacy while highlighting the critical importance of user vigilance in managing digital communications. This incident emphasizes the necessity for organizations to implement and enforce secure messaging platforms like Signal to protect sensitive information. Enterprises should adopt end-to-end encrypted communication tools and ensure employees are trained in their proper use. Even with secure platforms, user error can lead to unintended data exposure. Conduct regular training sessions to educate staff on best practices for managing contacts and group communication securely. Organizations must establish clear policies governing the use of secure messaging apps to prevent mishaps. Develop guidelines that outline appropriate use cases, approval processes, and monitoring mechanisms for secure communication tools. Now, let's take a step back for a minute and talk about this specific incident. Clearly, this was a monumental screw-up on the part of the Trump administration. You had members of the cabinet, including national security advisors, the vice president was on it, as well as the secretary of defense, and they inadvertently, and depending on who you talk to, there's a number of theories now, and I won't get into the theories themselves, but they're claiming they inadvertently invited a journalist to this discussion. And everyone's up in arms about this now. And it's a major security breach. One side reports no classified data was released. Another side reports that specific information about target packages, flight paths, timing, and so forth has been released in that. The question that people seem to not be asking is, why are high-level government officials using Signal? Now, Signal itself is, according to the article, secure, but it's not approved as a secure messaging application for federal government workers, certainly not FedRAMP approved. I did a little bit of research before the show, and there are a number of messaging platforms, such as Microsoft's Teams, that operates in the GCC High Cloud for government use, that is considered secure and approved. There's Zoom for government that is considered secure and approved. Every commercially available messaging app that is approved for use by federal employees has a government's secure enclave that they operate in for this very reason. The other thing is those approved platforms archive all the messages. So everything that you say can be retrieved later on if needed by Congress, by special investigators, by anybody that needs access to it. It's a matter of public record. It should be preserved. The only reason one would use Signal is if you want your communications off the books. And the fact that they were using Signal to communicate war plans or battle plans or whatever you want to call them is highly inappropriate. I think people are asking the wrong questions about why this journalist got on it. People should be asking, why are they using a non-approved, not secure application that's anonymous? I think that's a bigger indicator of a problem than anything else. Yes, the operation turned out to be a success. Terrorists were attacked. The mission went off without a hitch. That's great. But what else are these people hiding in their discussions on Signal? You can't just let something like this go by the wayside. This is no different than Nixon during Watergate erasing the tapes. You're literally deliberately getting rid of evidence that can be used in investigations later on, and there's no accountability associated with it. That's where the problem is right now. That's where people need to focus their attention. I'm not sure that's going to go anywhere. The current administration seems quite content to brush this under the carpet and move on and try to downplay it. But I think that's a mistake. Hegseth, Secretary of Defense Hegseth, has come out and vehemently denied any information of a sensitive nature was released during this, which I find dubious at best, considering the White House already had acknowledged the leak and the sensitivity of the information that was in there. So anything that Hegseth comes out with now is not believable at this point. He's lost all credibility. We'll see where it goes. That was all we had for our first segment. Before we do go, I want to invite you to write in, give us your feedback. Tell us how we're doing. Do you agree with our point of view on these things? Are there stories that you'd like us to cover? Are there topics, specific topics in technology you'd like us to cover? You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com, or you can call in and leave a voicemail for us at 856-403-8788. Again, that's 856-403-8788. Let us know what you want to talk about. We can get your comments on the air on a later podcast if you want. You can also find links to all that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. And we'll be right back.
Are you tired of your favorite gaming podcast finishing with a play?
Oh, no!
Well, check out No Credits Rolled, where we play the games but rarely finish them. How's it going, folks? I'm Sam Whalen, your friendly host at No Credits Rolled, the ultimate gaming podcast, where we dish out the latest scoops and reviews on all your beloved video games.
Hey, listen!
Not only that, but we spice things up with some guest interviews and even give you, yes, you, a chance to have your say. Tune in every other week for a fresh dose of No Credits Rolled, available on all major podcast platforms, and hit us up on social media at No Credits Rolled. So why wait? Let's dive into the gaming world together, where finishing games is optional, but the fun is guaranteed.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. Next up is a story from Derek Johnson at Cyberscoop. Chinese tech still haunting U.S. infrastructure. The FCC is launching a sweeping investigation into Chinese telecommunication companies over allegations they're skirting U.S. bans by operating through loopholes in private channels. Commissioner Brendan Carr announced the probe, part of the new FCC Council on National Security, citing concerns that firms like Huawei, ZTE, and Hikvision are conducting business in the U.S. despite being blacklisted under the 2019 Secure and Trusted Communications Networks Act. That law prohibits the use of federal funds to buy equipment from companies deemed national security threats and offers incentives for U.S. carriers to replace existing Chinese-made gear. Carr claims these companies may be an end run around the bans by selling equipment to private buyers who are exploiting regulatory gray areas. Subpoenas and letters of inquiry have already been issued. The investigation comes amid heightened concern over massive Chinese espionage campaign targeting U.S. telecoms, although that breach reportedly did not rely on Chinese-made hardware. Now, ironically, that breach itself is a result of backdoors that our government insisted that our telecom providers put in so that law enforcement could more easily conduct phone taps and investigations. And the Chinese found these backdoors and got in under those. Why we're now banning Chinese manufacturers when we put the backdoors in ourselves? That's a good question. So what does this mean for commercial and enterprise computing? Well, there's certainly a risk associated with these hidden Chinese tech and supply chain issues. Despite federal bans, some companies may unknowingly continue sourcing from blacklisted vendors through third parties. Enterprises should audit their telecom infrastructure and procurement channels to ensure full compliance with the Secure Networks Act's restrictions. The FCC's new council signals tighter scrutiny and broader enforcement going forward. Companies operating in regulated industries should prepare for more frequent inspections or inquiries, especially if reliant on international vendors. There's also the liability and risk to reputation for companies that are not compliant with this. My company needs to be NDAA compliant with all the communications equipment that we use, or we can't bid on federal contracts, which is a huge portion of our business. So it's not just reputation there. It's a threat to your business if you're non-compliant. Any continued business with restricted entities, even indirectly, could expose enterprises to legal penalties and reputational damage. Organizations should consult legal and compliance teams regularly to keep up with vendor risk and sanction enforcement updates. One of the things that we ran into back during COVID, and everyone was scrambling to try to find technological solutions to keep themselves up and running so they could run safely. One of the things my company did was invest in facial recognition scanners that when you walked through one of your entryways, the system itself had an infrared camera. It would take a picture of your face. The software would do facial recognition. It would determine whether or not you had a fever, and it would alarm if you did. Well, when we first started using these, everything worked fine. We were sending the data. All the data resided on a server. That server was in the United States. It was based in California at the time. I think it was an Amazon web server that it was on, actually. And about 3 months in, the service stopped working. And we didn't get any notification. It wasn't a subscription-based service. It was a free service that came with the devices. So it wasn't like we neglected to pay the bill or anything. And upon doing further investigation, we ran a packet sniffer on the devices and found that they were no longer trying to connect to the servers in California or the servers in the United States. They were trying to hit Chinese IP addresses. And it turned out what happened was there was an update made to the devices remotely through auto updates that changed the hosting provider of the database, and wanted to try to send off all of our data to a server in China. The only reason it broke is because we have geofencing rules in our firewall that when it tried to connect to the server in China, the firewall wouldn't allow it. And as a result, they were just showing up as failures, that these things were not connecting to the server. So unfortunately, despite our best efforts, we couldn't get these back up and running. We couldn't point to a different server or anything. So we had to throw these things basically in the trash. So that's an example of a device that was secure, that when it came in, that through automatic updates started being non-compliant and trying to talk out to Chinese servers. And since then, we've been very diligent about any equipment that we bring in, surveillance cameras, IP phones, anything along those lines, cell phones, nothing that is on the restricted list. And there's a number of sites out there run by the government. FCC runs it, DoD runs one. They should all be referenced when you're looking for compliance on the government side. There's a tremendous potential for losing data or exfiltrating data when you don't know who actually owns the cloud provider that you're using, which obviously it's one of the risks that you have in cloud computing. Next up, Ralph Narain from Security Week tells us we're stuck in the CVE pipeline. The National Vulnerabilities Database, or the NVD, managed by NIST, is facing growing crisis. A ballooning backlog of common vulnerabilities and exposures, CVEs, has slowed the processing pipeline to a crawl, with submissions outpacing capacity by over 30%. Despite returning to pre-slowdown processing rates after a rough 2024, NIST admits its current workflows, based on outdated formats and manual enrichment, are no match for the surge. The agency is now looking to AI and automation to help clear the jam, but in the meantime, the delay is widening the gap between vulnerability discovery and actionable intelligence, putting enterprises at greater risk. The consequences are already rippling through the cybersecurity community. The NVD serves as a foundational source of truth for vulnerability management, and its delays are leaving organizations blind to critical exposures. With the 2025 submission rate expected to rise further, security leaders are questioning how long they can rely on a federal database that can't keep up with the threat landscape. And it's worth mentioning that on top of the already strained resources, we've had significant resources cut across the board on all government agencies, which is going to put even more strain on things. So your threat intelligence feeds may be outdated or incomplete. Many security tools ingest CVE data directly from the NVD. Delays in enrichment or validation mean organizations may miss critical or recently disclosed vulnerabilities. Companies should consider supplementing NVD feeds with data from vetted commercial threat intel platforms or industry ISACs. The increased need for in-house triage and prioritization is going to go up. And I think the message that we're getting from the current administration basically told us that already, because they're cutting most federal resources. They want to offload a lot of this to the states and to the commercial industries. And that, I have to say, is music to the ears of adversarial nations out there everywhere. Russia, Iran, North Korea, China, they love the fact that we're cutting back on the defenses that we have in place at the federal level, knowing that because all of their efforts are nation-state level efforts, it won't take much to overwhelm state, local, and commercial resources. So this is going to be a very dangerous time the next few years. With slower NVD updates, enterprises must take a more proactive role in analyzing and classifying newly discovered CVEs. Security teams should develop internal processes for assessing CVE severity and exploitability, independent of the NVD's timelines. Now, if you do subscribe to any serious security provider out there, or if you have SIEM software or RMM software to manage your networks, most of them will provide access to their own curated databases. A lot of those curated databases draw on federal resources, but they're supplemented by commercial and private findings as well. So don't be afraid to lean on your existing relationships if you have to. NIST backlog stems partly from a lack of scalable automation. Enterprises can learn from this by evaluating their own use of AI and automation in vulnerability assessment. Implement tools that can automatically assess risk based on asset context, exploit likelihood, and patch availability. Regulatory frameworks often reference NVD classifications. Delays in assigning CVE details can complicate compliance reporting, and vendor risk management. Organizations should document alternative methods for vulnerability tracking and show due diligence in cases where official NVD entries are delayed. If you don't already have an alternate source for your vulnerability reporting, find it now. There are tons of them out there. Sadly, I had written some of these up in my notes from last week, but I overwrote those notes for this week's show, so I don't have those in front of me. If I dig a few of those up, I'll throw them in the show notes on the website moving forward or on the Twitch site. The last article we have today comes from Connor Jones at the Register. I didn't switch my thing over. There we go. Sorry about that. Connor Jones at the Register. When the hunter gets hunted. I saw this today and had to throw it in here, not to gloat or poke fun at, but basically to kind of bring everyone down to earth and let you know that everybody makes mistakes. Even the most highly trained, most educated, most experienced security professional out there can make mistakes under different circumstances, so don't beat yourself up about it. If nothing else, this story is a great example of what you do as far as transparency and disclosure when you are breached. Troy Hunt, renowned cybersecurity expert and founder of Have I Been Pwned, has revealed he was targeted in a sophisticated phishing attack leveraging MailChimp. The attackers used compromised MailChimp accounts to send malicious unsubscribed links that, when clicked, harvested user credentials, bypassing even Hunt's two-factor authentication. Over 16,000 email addresses were exposed in the incident, many of them belonging to people who had explicitly unsubscribed from Hunt's updates, making the breach especially ironic. This attack underscores how even top-tier InfoSec professionals aren't immune to increasingly creative phishing campaigns. Hunt used the opportunity to publicly dissect the attack mechanics and share valuable lessons for security practitioners. His transparency has reignited discussions about the limitations of two-factor authentication, especially when phishing-resistant methods like FIDO2 aren't in place. Hunt's compromise despite 2FA shows that standard one-time password authentication is no longer sufficient. I know we've been talking that up for some time now, that you need two-factor, you can't just go with passwords alone. That time seems to be coming to an end at this point in time. Enterprises should adopt phishing-resistant protocols like FIDO2 WebAuth whenever possible. The breach stemmed from a compromised MailChimp account used to distribute malware under the guise of trusted messages. Again, undermining the trust system that we have in place to protect ourselves. You should regularly audit third-party service integrations and avoid including sensitive links, like unsubscribed links, that could be spoofed or weaponized. As much as I talk about training and education, this is a clear indication that education isn't the cure-all. Even someone with Hunt's expertise can fall for a well-crafted fish. Complement training with layered defenses, email filtering, link scanning, and domain authentication. Your DMARC, your SPF, your DKIM, and so forth. There are layered securities that you have to take into effect. Defense in depth is what a lot of cybersecurity professionals talk about. There's no one solution to secure your network. It's a combination of various methods, various channels, and various solutions to secure your network. We can't assume passwords will do it anymore. We can't assume the two-factor will do it anymore. You know, we're using YubiKeys at my company, or we're using password authenticators at my company. You have biometrics that you can be using. You can be using facial recognition, fingerprint reading, any number of things out there that will add some layer of complexity that would make it more difficult for someone to just fish that information from you. Something you have, something you know, and something you do, I think was the other saying that we would say. So that's it for the news. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion on artificial intelligence. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Technology. Today we're exploring the foundations of machine learning and deep learning, how these powerful methods got started, how they work, and why they're so crucial for modern businesses. So there's really three main categories of machine learning. We touched on some of that in our last deep dive. So the first we talk about is supervised learning. So in a supervised setup, we train an AI model using labeled data. Think of it like giving the systems lots of samples of input plus correct answer. A common commercial use case is spam detection in email. The system sees thousands of examples labeled spam or not spam, then learns to make the call on new messages. Many businesses adopt supervised learning for tasks like predicting customer churn, detecting fraudulent transactions, and classifying product images. One of the significant advantages of supervised learning is you have a lower number of hallucinations. Your accuracy rate tends to be higher because the input is more direct. You're not expecting the model to train itself You're not expecting it to necessarily train on questionable data or data that's outside your control. Supervised learning is a very controlled environment, which makes the results tend to be more accurate, but probably less flexible than what a lot of people think of when they think of AI. You have unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, the model gets data, but no explicit labels. It's like sifting through a box of puzzle pieces without a picture on the box, trying to group similar pieces together. Enterprises rely on unsupervised learning for customer segmentation, where the AI spots patterns in purchasing data to form distinct market groups. It's also used for anomaly detection, uncovering strange or unexpected behaviors in network traffic, or financial transactions. So in this case here, the unsupervised data is great at doing one of the tedious things in cybersecurity, which is log parsing. Something that's going to go out there and look at those logs on a regular basis. It's going to do pattern recognition. It's going to see when 2 or 3 things have to happen in order to understand that there's a problem, and it's going to pick up on that, flag it, and notify you about it. It's not the sophisticated level of interactions you have, but it also doesn't require as much hand-holding as supervised learning does, which, certainly has its advantages. The third version that we have is reinforcement learning. Here, an AI agent learns by trial and error, receiving rewards or penalties based on its actions. Imagine training a robot to navigate a warehouse, rewarding it each time it moves a package correctly. Reinforcement learning remains somewhat cutting edge for commercial uses, but shows promise in robotics and supply chain optimization, and even dynamic pricing strategies where AI tries different price points to maximize revenue. Now, there is a little bit of controversy surrounding this technique, especially when it comes to price points with sales. One of the things that it's been targeted for and called out for is regional pricing. So if I go to a website and I'm in California, I'll get a different price if I go to Best Buy to buy online than if I'm in New Jersey to get a price, because cost of living is different, clientele is different, shipping is different. So it's getting a bad rap right now for that, but it's not the end of the world. It's a logical step in the right direction. So beyond this, and when we start getting into our chat engines, we get into deep learning methods. So the engines behind these methods. Let's talk about the engines that allow these things to happen, which are neural networks. At their core, neural networks are collections of neurons, in this case, mathematical units. They're arranged in layers that process information. The first layer that you process is the input layer, where data enters, like an image or transaction data. The next is the hidden layers. So the middle layers that transform inputs into more abstract representations, similar to how the human brain processes visual information step by step. And then the final layer is the output layer, where the final decision or prediction emerges. Cat versus dog, legitimate transaction versus fraudulent transaction. In business context, these architectures allow computers to recognize patterns in large data sets, from detecting brand logos in social media posts to forecasting product demand. When you scale these networks up and stack multiple layers, you step into the realm of deep learning, the current powerhouse approach for tackling complex tasks like image recognition, natural language processing, and more. So, the evolution from traditional machine learning to deep learning. Why did deep learning suddenly take off? Several factors converged in this case here. There's a data explosion, and I don't think anyone will deny this. Digital age means companies collect massive amounts of data, far more than older machine learning methods could handle effectively. Then we have the increase in computational muscle. Advancements in cloud computing and specialized hardware, especially in GPUs, made training large neural networks much faster and more feasible. Then we had algorithmic innovations. Breakthroughs like convolutional neural networks, which we talked about in our last segment, for images, and recurrent or transformer-based networks for language have dramatically improved accuracy in real-world tasks. Thanks to these developments, deep learning often outperforms traditional models on tasks like voice assistance or predictive maintenance in factories. Deep learning can spot complex patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed, giving businesses a new edge in automation, personalization, and data-driven insights. So that's a little bit about deep learning there. In our next episode or next segment, hopefully next week, we'll take a deeper look at large language models and the principles and architectures thriving in that technology. That was all we had. Before we go, I did have some shout outs that I wanted to do. A couple of these were carried over from last week, so if they're a few days older than usual, I apologize, but I want to give folks credit for supporting the show. For Twitch follows this time, we have Brandon Spar 420, Nora Hazel _U, Bananarama _ Brendan Garner 12345. It almost sounds like a password. And we had Perfect Baby with the B being replaced with an 8. So thank you for your continued support on Twitch and for supporting us and giving us your likes. We had 2 website likes on our WordPress site, on our main site, www.insightsintothings.com. USA Post 24 gave us a couple, and Mark Gray did. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And it's through the support and continued attention from our viewers and listeners that we reached a major milestone with the podcast. Insights into Technology has reached and surpassed our first 1,000 downloads, which is almost twice as fast as any of our other shows have gotten to that point. So thank you to all of our loyal listeners and viewers for making this podcast such a success so early on. I appreciate it. I would love to hear from you. If you're shy and don't want to get on the show, you can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We can give you a shout out, or we can discuss whatever topic you want to email in about. If you do want to get on the show, give us a call. Leave a voicemail for us at 856-403-8788. That's 856-403-8788. You can also find high-res versions of all of the shows on the network on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. If you are an Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a free Twitch Prime subscription monthly. We would appreciate it if you threw that our way. It helps us keep the lights on around here. You can find all this and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. Thank you again. And that's it. Another one in the books.